7 force field. Don't worry. I'll break you out of there. Glad I could help.
So, the other day I stumbled across the latest brain teaser put forward by the BBC to titillate their tax-paying audience. Is a new hate speech law killing German comedy? To which my immediate reaction, of course, was along the lines of, German comedy?
And I was once on a German talk show, and if you want to go on one, it's a lot of fun. It's really fun. And I was on this German talk show, and this woman said to me, she said, Mr. Williams, why do you think there's not so much comedy in Germany? And I said, did you ever think you killed all the funny people? And it was, and here's where it got interesting. She didn't bat an eyelash, she just went, no. At that point, even God's going, do you get it? German comedy, knock, knock, we ask the questions.
Comedy in Germany is dying. Yeah, and in other news, the Icelandic camel trade is on its last legs. Who cares? Move on. But I got over that, and after watching the video itself, quickly realised that it actually annoyed me on multiple levels. Okay, first level. I must have missed a meeting. But when did we all agree that hate speech is a legitimate concept that can be just bandied around like cake at a picnic? I don't accept the premise of this conversation, and seeing as though you make no effort to define hate speech or why I should care about it, we could stop the video right here, to be honest, because as a liberal, I read that sentence and it might as well say, Germany is cracking down on flubbleblah. They're having a real problem with flubbleblah. Second level. Anyone asking a question that stupid must have been cryogenically frozen for the last 30 years. Germany's Nazi grandma given jail term for Holocaust denial. 62-year-old German woman fined over €1,000 for sharing anti-migrant joke online. German police raid homes of people who made hateful postings on the internet. German anti-immigrant leader fined over Facebook post. Merkel allows prosecution of German comedian who mocked Turkish president. Limiting freedom of speech? What's there to limit? It's dust, mate. A conceptual dinosaur. It's a stiff. Bereft of life, it rests in peace. If you hadn't nailed it to the perch, it would be pushing up the daisies. The reality of its demise is so obvious by now that asking this question, I'm sorry, it makes you kinda thick.
Katie? Are you okay? Are you okay?
Last year, Parliament here behind me has passed one of the strictest online hate speech laws worldwide. Here in Germany, big social media companies are asked to remove hate speech within 24 hours or face millions in fines.
Third level. Social media companies are now emissaries of the German state, so that's reassuring, and just happily going along with it, of course, even though people like Mark Zuckerberg practically admit they have no idea how to implement such a policy. He can't police hate speech. He can't even define it.
I worry about a world where when you go from violent groups to hate speech in a hurry, in one of your responses to one of the opening questions, you may decide, or Facebook may decide, it needs to police a whole bunch of speech that I think America might be better off not having policed by one company that has a really big and powerful platform. Can you define hate speech?
Senator, I think that this is a really hard question, and I think it's one of the reasons why we struggle with it. There are certain definitions that we have around, calling for violence or.
Let's just agree on that. If somebody's calling for violence, that shouldn't be there. I'm worried about the psychological categories around speech. You used language of safety and protection earlier. We see this happening on college campuses all across the country. It's dangerous. 40% of Americans under age 35 tell pollsters they think the First Amendment is dangerous because you might use your freedom to say something that hurts somebody else's feelings. Guess what? There are some really passionately held views about the abortion issue on this panel today. Can you imagine a world where you might decide that pro-lifers are prohibited from speaking about their abortion views on your content, on your platform?
I certainly would not want that to be the case.
But it might really be unsettling to people who've had an abortion to have an open debate about that, wouldn't it?
It might be, but I don't think that would fit any of the definitions of what we have.
Look at him. It's painful. And it's not his fault, by the way. It's not like he's an idiot or anything. The subject itself is idiotic. You can't make sense of this language. It's like something out of a Dr. Seuss book. What he should be saying to Angela Merkel is, we're not playing this game. If you can't handle free expression, if you want to piss about, auf Wiedersehen. Make your own Facebook. I'm sure that'll go down like a gigolo at a dyke wedding.
But it's not only hate speech that was deleted in the first few months. Sophie Passmann is a stand-up comedian and radio host. She works for Neo Magazin Royal, one of the most popular late-night shows in German TV. She suddenly found herself accused of spreading hate speech.
Of course she was. I mean, how many comedians have come forward already to complain about the atmosphere of political correctness damaging their profession? Mel Brooks, Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, John Cleese, Ricky Gervais, Gilbert Gottfried, some of the greatest comedians who have ever lived, and Gilbert Gottfried, and you're surprised that a law enforcing political correctness will have this kind of ramification.
I do this joke about the way people need to justify their cell phone. I need to have it with me because people are so important.
Right.
You know, I said, well, they don't seem very important the way you scroll through them like a gay French king. You know, just... I did this line recently in front of an audience, and comedy's where you can kind of feel like an opinion. And they thought, what do you mean gay? What are you talking about gay? What are you saying gay? What are you doing? What do you mean, you know? And I thought, are you kidding me? I mean, we can't even... I could imagine a time, and this is a serious thing, I can imagine a time when people say, well, that's offensive to suggest that a gay person moves their hands in a flourishing motion, and you now need to apologize. I mean, there's a creepy PC thing out there that really bothers me.
We have this custom in Germany where every New Year's Eve we watch the same stupid movie. It's called Dinner for One, and we did that, and I hate that movie.
As usual, millions of Germans watched this goofy British skit this past New Year's Eve.
Well, that's hate speech for a start. Sound the alarm!
Fucking me!
According to at least some Marxist maniacs, hate speech is speech that attacks a person or group on the basis of attributes such as race, religion, ethnic origin, national origin, sexual orientation, disability or gender. Britain is a nation, at least for now anyway. Britons are the group. He's calling our skits goofy. That's a hate crime. What was this guy's name again? Because I gotta report him. Sorry, Mr. Jan Brook, but I don't make the rules.
The next day, Sophie posted a joke about it on Twitter.
As long as it's tradition here to watch Dinner for One on New Year's Eve, refugees are welcome to come here and destroy our culture.
and was making fun about people who actually say that refugees come to our country and destroy our culture, which is just stupid. Then I received, on that evening, I received an email from Twitter saying that they checked the content of that tweet and they had to ban it within German law.
Brilliant. I'd like to believe that somebody at Twitter HQ has a sense of humour. And do you think that the BBC will press her on that? Do you think they're going to be like, so on reflection then, quite an ironic joke really? I mean, in hindsight, do you see how mass immigration coupled with politicians across the continent committing cultural harakiri in front of us might in fact be changing aspects of your society, such as upping the ante over all this hate speech nonsense? Cross your mind, or...?
The deletion of Sophie's joke made headlines all over Germany, and after a few days it was reinstated again by Twitter.
There shouldn't be a law against bad jokes, because that would mean that half of the comedians in Germany wouldn't be allowed to be on stage. So it was just a bad joke and it wasn't hate speech, and that made me angry that they took my freedom of speech in that very moment.
Right, and it's worth pointing out that you have a bit of a profile, and that, coupled with whatever backlash was generated, is clearly the reason why Twitter reversed the decision. What about the tens of thousands, millions of people in Germany without protection of that kind, who Twitter and Facebook will just outright censor? It's not worth the hassle, as far as they're concerned. Better safe than sorry, because despite most of us believing that these companies were already too censorious, now they're the official whipping boys of a soy empire, comprised of cowards and creeps.
But some experts are speaking out in favor of the law.
Oh God, I can't wait to meet these people.
Researchers published a paper evaluating it. They say it's a first step in the right direction.
I think the fear that has been voiced...
Okay, right, see, this is what I'm talking about. I guarantee that somebody is fucking that guy's wife right now. Right now that is happening. Go to Pornhub.com. You'll find it there. Check the live streams.
I think the fear that has been voiced is that there will be mass deletion of posts, of videos, of pictures that are not in violation of the German criminal code. And for that, I do not see any evidence at the moment, at least.
Yes, well, you've clearly been too busy shopping at BDSM World to pay much attention to the lawyers at Human Rights Watch then, who disagree with you. They penned an article back in February arguing that the law is vague, overbroad, and turns private companies into overzealous censors to avoid steep fines, leaving users with no judicial oversight or right to appeal. The law places the burden on companies that host third-party content to make difficult determinations of when user speech violates the law, under conditions that encourage suppression of arguably lawful speech. The law fails to provide either judicial oversight or a judicial remedy should a cautious corporate decision violate a person's right to speak or access information. In this way, the largest platforms for online expression become no accountability zones, where government pressure to censor evades judicial scrutiny. And it's not just them. The Global Network Initiative, Article 19, a host of human rights organisations have come forward and said, you've crossed a line here. Germany has undermined free speech at home and set a troubling example for other countries that want to block artistic expression, social criticism, political activism, or independent journalism online. Exactly. Any high ground the Germans once occupied, any platform from which they could have stuck up for free speech on the international stage, has pretty much crumbled beneath their feet. The whole thing is a shit show.
We asked both Facebook and Twitter for a response on how they are implementing the requirements of this new law. Twitter didn't want to comment, but Facebook sent us this statement.
Facebook reviews every NetzDG report carefully and with legal expertise where appropriate. Facebook is not pursuing a strategy to delete more than necessary.
Now I feel better.
Not all comedians in Germany think the law is a bad thing.
Sure, the unfunny ones don't. The government have just criminalised the competition. I bet they're delighted.
Sophie's friend Michel Abdullahi is German-Iranian. Like Sophie, he receives a lot of abuse online.
You and your religion don't belong to Germany. Go back to your country.
What's that stupid talking about?
You see, a real comedian would turn material like that into a joke. You know, they'd make it funny and mock the person who wrote it. But everyone's a snowflake nowadays. Even people who dish it out for a living, which is why this law exists. For God's sake, do your job. Make a joke about it. Make a joke.
But again, that's what the world is like. People take everything personally. I think the world revolves around them, right? Particularly on Twitter, right? I don't know. I'm not tweeting anyone. I'm just tweeting, okay? I don't know who's following me. I've got 12 million followers. I don't know who's following me. They can be following me without me knowing, right? Choose to read my tweet and then take that personally. That's like going into a town square, seeing a big notice board, and there's a notice, guitar lessons, and you go, but I don't fucking want guitar lessons. What's this? There's a number here. All right, call that, right? Are you giving me guitar lessons? Yeah. I don't fucking want any. Fine, it's not for you then. Just walk away. Don't worry about it.
Michel doesn't think tweets like Sophie's should be blocked, but he agrees with the goals of the law.
This law is, I don't know, it's like a toddler. It's starting to walk, and it might be a little bit clumsy right now, but I think it will grow in the next years. But we did something, and that is important.
And that's it, isn't it? We did something. We're progressing, and that's what matters. They don't know what they're doing, how to do it, or even why, really. They're just doing things. Well, have you thought about maybe not? Have you considered that you could be making things worse? That you're tinkering with something you don't understand? These societies of ours are in reality quite delicate things, you know. They aren't places you can just keep on doing things to blindly without conjuring up some pretty radical results. I know you're trying to make things better. That's what's so sad, really. That's what every idiot who has ever lived has thought, okay? Just leave it, mate. Just don't touch it. Before it's too late. Before you wreck something that was originally pretty good irrevocably.
Oh, Jesus! Oh, God! Oh, Jesus! God! Oh, Mary, Mother of Jesus! Jesus of Nazareth!
The German government is standing by this law. But after a lot of criticism, it has said it is open to re-evaluating it and making changes in the future.
Well, unless those changes involve taking every copy of that bill and burying it in a ditch, I won't hold my breath, if that's all the same to you. And you gotta admire the balls of the BBC. They've got more front than Brighton. They released this video a mere 2 days after a comedian was fined £800 in the UK for telling the wrong joke. Where's their video on that? Where's their video on Sadiq Khan's efforts to introduce the same sort of garbage into British law? The Fourth Estate should be the first safeguard our communities have against this sort of encroachment, and we need them now. We need them to step up, not to provide some two-bit, semi-interested, toe dip into the water of the topic afterthought. This is serious stuff. It's going to spread. Social media is being censored in Germany. The mainstream media will be next. What, you think that can't happen? You think the German government can't pay the BBC branch in Berlin a visit and tell them one of these days, better not print that story. It could inspire some hatred out there, you know. We need to fight it. I tackle it at the source. I say hate speech is a nonsense. You might as well categorise jealous speech and have a law against that. Let's prohibit displays of indignation while we're at it. You don't get to police people's emotions in a free society. It's not possible and it's ridiculous. You don't banish negative feelings by ignoring them or outlawing them. You just make them fester and eventually erupt, which is probably what's going to happen. Wise up. Wise up, wake up, and shape up.
I completely reject the entire category of hate speech. And I'm always really surprised that so many people treat the category of hate speech seriously. You hear people having discussions like, is this hate speech, is that hate speech? And I'm always thinking, what are you doing? Why are you treating hate speech as some kind of measurable scientific category? To my mind, the category of hate speech is as ridiculous and as abominable, in fact, as the idea of thought crime. And my mission in life, or at least this afternoon, is to create a situation where people bristle and balk as much at the phrase hate speech as they do at the phrase thought crime. There are two reasons I reject the category of hate speech. The first is that this is an ideological invention. It is explicitly designed to repress the expression of certain ideas, and it does that to great effect. It is an ideological tool disguised as a moral good. And the second reason I reject the category of hate speech is because it encroaches into the realm of free communication in an extraordinary way, in a way that no other law or censor in modern times has done. Because it polices not only ideas, but also emotions, feelings. It is the definition of government overreach. It has all the ingredients of tyranny. So on the first point, the ideology of the category of hate speech, you can really see its ideological component if you look at the history of the modern idea of hate speech. Because after the Second World War, the keenest proponents for controls on hate speech were the Soviet Union. And you had all these international gatherings in the 1940s and 50s where people were drawing up international treaties and so on. And the Soviets were always pushing for the criminalization of hate speech, particularly fascistic and racist speech. They wanted international treaties to demonize and potentially criminalize hatred and incitement to hatred. And amazingly, the West actually resisted their demands. Eleanor Roosevelt was leading the Western camp for a period of time while these international treaties were being drawn up. And she said it would be extremely dangerous to outlaw hate speech because any criticisms of public or religious authorities might all too easily be described as incitement to hatred. Now, amazingly, the Soviets won, and in 1965, the UN Convention outlawed the following: ideas based on racial superiority. The key word there is ideas. From the outset, hate speech laws were about repressing ideas, obnoxious ideas, but nonetheless ideas. It is an ideological tool for the repression of ideas. And even worse than being an ideological tool, it's an extremely elastic one. It's extraordinary how unwieldy and arbitrary hate speech laws are and how much they have spread. So they've spread from criminalizing racial speech to criminalizing religious hatred. In Scandinavia, there are discussions to outlaw misogynistic speech. On campuses, they want to outlaw, or they no platform, transphobic speech. So hate speech restrictions spread and spread and spread. There's an unstoppable momentum because once you accept the originally Soviet idea that some forms of speech are so hateful they must be repressed, then there is no end to what you might potentially censor. Just to see how terrifying this is, in Sweden, a Christian pastor was given a 1-month suspended prison sentence for describing homosexuality as a tumor on society. Now, we might all think that's repulsive, but he believes that with every fiber of his being. He was imprisoned for expressing his beliefs. Brigitte Bardot has been fined €30,000 for describing the Islamic ritual slaughter of meat as barbaric. She believes that. Really believes that. On campuses, you're not allowed to say that a person with a penis is a man. If you say that on campuses, they will accuse you of hate speech. This is the world we live in, folks. If you say a man is a man, you are accused of committing a hate speech crime. So the unstoppable logic is extraordinary. And students, I think, the students who try and clamp down on hate speech always present themselves as radicals, but actually they are the foot soldiers of a top-down, tyrannical attempt to repress the expression of ideas that started with the Soviet Union and was in the 60s and 70s embraced by Western powers. And then final point, the second point is the level of intervention the hate speech laws grant the authorities, which is that, yes, they suppress ideas, but they also police emotions. Hatred is an emotion. Might not be a big and clever emotion, but it is an emotion. And to invite the authorities or student unions or any other form of officialdom to police emotions is the definition of tyranny. We have to get serious about freedom of speech. It is unacceptable to repress the expression of ideas. It is unacceptable to repress the expression of hatred. And it is unacceptable to repress the expression of racism. The question posed here is hate speech free speech? I think we should say hate speech is a nonsense. There is only speech, and all speech should be free.